we've got J.J. McCarthy in the concussion protocol. Kevin O'Connell said that J.J. McCarthy is in the concussion. Clarity on that, Boone, if you have that, please provide it, because sounds like our guy Max might start on Sunday in Seattle as J.J. McCarthy is in the concussion protocol. The internet's talking about soft benching. The internet's talking about, actually, Vikings wanted to get a look at Max Brosmer or Brosmer. Again, I'm gonna say Brosmer unless you think it's Brosmer. They've wanted to get a look. They've liked what they've seen from Brosmer. Yeah, go for it. What's his actual name?
I think it's Brosmer. I think it's Max Brosmer.
Okay.
I believe. Not 100%, but I believe it's Max Brosmer.
I think Brosmer sounds better, but Brosmer is probably actually correct. So whatever. All right. So Max Brosmer, the Vikings have wanted to get a look at him for quite some time. I've already seen people say, hey, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy situation brewing here in Minnesota. We got a long way to go before we get to that, but it sounds like we will not get J.J. McCarthy this week.
No, and we shouldn't. I mean, even if he was completely healthy, and I'm not going to speculate here whether it's a soft benching, whether they're doing this, who knows, right? We don't need to get into that. That doesn't matter for us and for fantasy. But regardless of his health situation, he probably shouldn't be playing. And it's terrible that they don't really have another guy that they can throw in there that they can feel confident in, that it was Carson Wentz for a while until Carson Wentz was basically carried out on his sword. But you just see it, right? From the players to the coaches, everyone just so frustrated there with the way the whole year's gone, right? And it's not just on McCarthy. It's the injuries to the offensive line. It's the defense really not performing in the way that we thought they would. They went out and invested in that defense. They're not playing great. Now, it doesn't help when you're not getting very stable quarterback play and then your defense is trying to pick up the pieces constantly. But you just see so much frustration from that sideline and really like a lack of confidence now from McCarthy. And I think he's trying to like power through it, and it just looks awful. And Max Brosmer, he could come in. This is a very easy act to follow. The bar is extremely low right now. All he needs to do is basically give them stable quarterback play. He doesn't need to be a superstar. He just needs to come in, and if you're pressured, throw the ball away, right? Like, just keep the offense moving, keep the chains moving. I don't know that that's what's really going to happen here. I don't think this is a scenario where we can get super excited and think that, we're going to have some amazing fairy tale story where this guy comes in and becomes the quarterback that they've always been looking for, like the Brock Purdy kind of thing. I don't know that that's going to be the case here. I think it's just a lost season for the Vikings, and I think they're going to have to look elsewhere for a quarterback next year. And if they keep McCarthy, it's going to be somebody really, really strong who can come in and compete with him. And I would put my money on that person taking the job, because McCarthy just does not look right now like he is the guy who can be the starting quarterback of this team, or really be a starting quarterback in the NFL at the moment. And maybe we'll get a later career resurgence. We constantly bring up the fact that this guy is so early in his NFL career to write him off. But normally when quarterbacks look this bad early on, it doesn't turn around very quickly. And maybe a few years from now, we'll have that Baker Mayfield, Geno Smith resurgence where he'll end up somewhere else and he'll have a decent little career. But right now, he has to go to the bench, whether it's because of injury or not. And I just don't know that it's going to change much for this offense, because they don't really have that other guy who could step in there, that kind of veteran presence like we've seen from some other teams with like a Jacoby Brissett, for example. Wouldn't it be nice if he was in Minnesota and all of a sudden elevating these pieces? I don't think Max Brosmer is that guy.
Yeah, I want to read off some of the stats for the audio listener that we just showed on the screen here. The stat that we had from Anthony Amico just puts it into perspective here, just how bad this has been here for J.J. McCarthy. He's like 851st out of 852 quarterbacks in EPA per dropback. The only one who's worse than him since 2000, this is the sample here among qualified quarterbacks since 2000, 851 out of 852 quarterbacks. The only one worse than J.J. McCarthy is Jamarcus Russell. Like, that's the level of play we're getting here. I also think the stat for Marif Hassan that we showed as well, I think really contextualizes what happened in this past week's game, which, watching it, as Reef points out here, when eliminating dropbacks with quick pressures under 2.5 seconds, J.J. McCarthy's performance against the Packers this week ranked 344th out of 346 quarterback performances this year in EPA per dropback, 331st in success rate. And like, that is eliminating the quick pressures. Because to me, this is the thing with McCarthy that's just felt off all year. He's never in tune with the speed of the game, Boone. And for as much as we could say like Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, some of these QB resurgences in other spots here, it was never this bad. It was never off rhythm with the speed of the game, because I think at times McCarthy has felt really sped up and he's getting the ball out way too quick. He's putting so much velocity on it. It's not a catchable football. And in this past week's game, it's almost like he really tried to slow it down. You know, he tried to slow down the pace of his game, and then he was just getting obliterated because he's holding on to the ball forever, because he's kind of just 1 to 2. Okay. And it's just, again, a guy like that, I said you need to roll with him the rest of the season and see what he has, but a guy like that is just unplayable. You've got to take him out of there for his own good, because these are no longer valuable reps for him. So you sit him down, you see what Brosmer has this week. And again, he's in the concussion protocol. I think that's real. He's got a concussion. That's probably going to take him out for this week anyways. But I think at this point it's just, hey, we give him a beat. We put him on the bench. And I think, frankly, this is probably what they were trying to do with the Carson Wentz stuff, is they kept saying, he's not ready to play. He might be clear, but he's not ready to play. I think they were kind of telling us, hey, we've seen signs that this might happen here.
I think it's also like more condemning that he has Kevin O'Connell as a coach and it's gone this way, right? Like some of those other players, you can at least say like, wow, the coaching staff wasn't great. And maybe if they had gone to a better team, it could have worked out for them. This was the scenario. Like one of the reasons why I thought he could surprise people before the season was because of the environment around him. And we could talk all day about how the injuries to the offensive line or some of the key pieces haven't been out there. We had Jordan Addison, who was suspended early in the season, all the excuses that you want to make. And yet he's had the opportunities. And now we have a bunch of these guys out there. Everything's there for him. And he just doesn't look even remotely close to being that guy. So then from a fantasy perspective, you have to look at it and you go, okay, Jordan Addison is completely off the radar, right? Like you're just talking about a total boomer bust flex play. He needs to find the end zone for him to have any fantasy value. Not somebody that I'd be carrying on my team. You look at Justin Jefferson, and I last week had him ranked about as low as I probably ever had him ranked, which was like mid to low end wide receiver 2. I think that's the range that he's in now moving forward until we see something change. And they have a couple of easier matchups. I've brought that up before. You look at the fantasy playoffs, they do have some games there where maybe based on the matchup, we could see a little something. Yet still, I think we're going to look at Justin Jefferson as a guy who's not going to get back into the wide receiver 1 ranks the rest of the season. And that is shocking. And that is just so awful and says so much about the quarterback play there. In the backfield, Aaron Jones this week, they were splitting a little more between him and Jordan Mason. So now that kind of bumps. Aaron Jones was kind of moving into the RB2 range. Now he's kind of back down to being that like fringe low end RB2, high end RB3. Jordan Mason, just a touchdown or bust flex option. Like, what do you look to? Like TJ Hawkinson has been terrible all year. He better not be on your bench even in fantasy right now. So there's really not much to do with this Vikings offense. You keep trotting out Justin Jefferson unless you have better receivers, but you don't feel good about it. And if you're relying on the backs of Minnesota, I don't know that you're going to have a very long run in the fantasy playoffs if you have them in your starting lineup.
Yeah, we had a question, about Justin Jefferson, like panic meter submission that was now I can't remember who sent it in. I apologize. I totally forget, but he is in the cope. Like this is in the coping corner. This whole offense is in the coping corner. It's for good reason. With Jefferson, the question was kind of, again, I apologize because I took it off the outline. But, the question was basically, do you try to trade him if you have a trade deadline next week? Like, yeah, if you can, sure. But I don't think anybody else is buying what you're selling, buddy. Everybody else has access to an internet connection. Everybody else is aware that J.J. McCarthy is playing the way that he is and now is not going to be playing this week. If there's any optimism off that, look, maybe Max Brosmer ends up being a dude, but it's a big risk to assume that. And if you can unload Jefferson, I would. And I think the reality here is just this is so not gone to plan for the Minnesota Vikings. Kevin O'Connell even said in the offseason, or maybe it was midway through last year, had the quote about organizations fail young quarterbacks before young quarterbacks fail organizations. And now he's finding out like that's a much easier thing to say than it is to do. It's a much easier thing than it is a life to live, right? And I think that's the problem right now is that it was Anthony, by the way. Anthony sent in the email, so shout out to Anthony. I appreciate you for sending that in. But we don't discuss the Cope and Corner players, even though we're doing it right now thanks to the news. This is just the reality here of where this is right now. And maybe Brosmer runs the offense better, but it's a weird offense, Boone, in that it is quarterback friendly, and yet it's not, because it's a hard offense. It's not like a Mickey Mouse sort of like, I'm not sure. Like Shane Steichen's offense is very quarterback friendly, in that there are these designed throws. The first read's always there.
Right.
It's a little bit of a quick game. This is a different unit than that, which is why I think it's been partly hard for JJ McCarthy to just drop in here and be like a caretaker. It's not really that type of unit. We don't know if Brosmer's going to be that, but at least it's something different. And again, from McCarthy's standpoint, I think he needs to take a beat. And then, yes, as you said, they'll bring in competition in the offseason. We will see who wins that battle. So get ready to learn, like, I don't know, maybe it will. Jacoby Brissett's on a 2-year deal. Mac Jones is on a 2-year deal. Like, who is it going to be in terms of and also, by the way, last point, and I'll let you have any other last words on this as well. It really sucks that we're having this conversation leading into week 13 when the Vikings will be playing Sam Darnold, who they had last year. That's extra insult to injury there.
Yeah, that's like another part of all of it. And that's something that I said earlier in the season, where I was very hard on Sam Darnold, him going to Seattle thinking that he can't bring Kevin O'Connell with him and that he would probably fail there. And he has played extremely well. And he looks great with the way all of this has gone down. Yeah, Sam Darnold coming out smelling like roses right now. And fantasy-wise, I mean, he's still just like a QB2. He's not somebody that's really like winning anybody their fantasy league. But from an actual, play real-life standpoint, Sam Darnold's turned into a solid quarterback, and you bet the Vikings wish they still had him under center.
Second piece of quarterback news item that we have here to discuss: Shedeur Sanders officially named the starting quarterback this week for the Cleveland Browns. This made sense, and Kevin Stefanski, and I kind of said, hey, like, Kevin, you're gonna go ahead and play Shedeur Sanders on the recap show yesterday when he didn't come out and immediately say that he was the starting quarterback. We all kind of knew what was happening here. Of course, all the conspiracy theorists are then out in droves, like, oh, see, he hates Shedeur. He was basically just waiting for Dylan Gabriel to clear the concussion protocol, which he did today, and then immediately Sanders is named the starter. So I don't know if you have, I don't know where you come down on the Shedeur Sanders conspiracy or the hot takes or the or the extremist stuff. You're a normal person, so I assume you aren't one of those human beings. But do you have
I would say one thing on it. I thought it was interesting that when we got the locker room speech from Stefanski, how he just kind of threw in the Shedeur thing. Like, did you watch that speech? Like, he goes off about all the different players that made plays in the game and gives everybody their props, and then very quickly mentions Shedeur Sanders and then moves right away to the defense. It was like the fastest mention. Didn't even really let it breathe. Didn't let the team go crazy for him, getting the win. And again, they were playing against the Raiders. I don't think it was because of Shedeur that they won that game. I think the defense probably was the real reason why they won that game. But I think you might want to hype up your rookie quarterback when he comes in there and plays well enough for the team to win. That's about as far as I wade into the conspiracy waters. I do think that coaches
in fairness,
and front office
Shedeur in his post-game interview was like, oh, imagine what it's going to look like next year with the full offseason. So maybe Stefanski said
that seemed like a shot. That definitely did seem like a shot. Yeah, no doubt.
He's feeling good enough. I don't need to acknowledge it here. Let's talk about the defense that had 10 damn sacks in the game.
Yeah, and that's probably true. But again, like, I try not to get into the conspiracy theory stuff too much unless I actually think it's going to impact anything for fantasy, which even with Shedeur under center, I don't think that much changes fantasy-wise for this offense, right? It's almost like talking about the Vikings where you look at it and you're just like, I kind of hope I don't have to play into these players on the Browns the rest of the way. Quinshon Judkins, somebody that I was pretty excited about, and we saw him end up having a decent fantasy result in this game, but it was because he found the end zone twice, right? It wasn't because he necessarily had a huge yardage total in the game. So he's still that guy that basically ends up being a touchdown or bust RB2. And they were playing the Raiders, which we have to say again, right? Like, how many matchups are they going to have where they're playing teams on the Raiders level where they're going to keep it very close and they're going to be able to stay competitive and even potentially lean on teams? Also, Judkins got a little bit banged up in this game. He left a couple times to get checked out in the fourth quarter. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. I think he's going to be okay. But again, we're going to have to make sure and monitor and make sure he's going to be able to play this week. If not, Dylan Sampson, and I don't want to spoil anything from the waiver wire section, but guys that we might go out and pick up preemptively just in case something happens there. But yeah, otherwise for this offense, I mean, what are we looking at? Jerry Jeudy had like the most Jerry Jeudy play of all time, right? That was incredible. Like, to be wide open downfield and catch that bomb. and then just do this weird little skip jump move as he's trying to fake out defenders, not realizing there's a defender barreling down behind him who just knocks the ball clean out, and it's a fumble. And you just kind of have to laugh at something like that. But you're not playing anybody in this receiving core. Harold Fannin Jr. is a guy that you could look at as a tight end 2 streamer type, but he hasn't really gotten enough volume and moved up into that tight end 1 range, even though I think the talent is there for him. And otherwise, what is there in this offense? You're not playing Shedeur unless you're in a 2 QB or super flex format. So it's not really an exciting one to talk about here, even though I am very happy for Shedeur that he can go out there, get this opportunity. And then, like you said, let him start the rest of the way. He's not competing for the real starting job. He's not going to be the starter in 2026 unless some sort of miracle happens, but he might be competing for the backup job next year. I think that's the decision that's going to have to be made. Is it going to be Gabriel? Is it going to be Shedeur moving forward? And if he plays well enough the rest of the way, I think he could definitely win that job, because Gabriel definitely isn't the answer.
Yeah, no, Gabriel's not the answer. Shedeur is probably not the answer, but you might as well find out here over the rest of the season. And if Shedeur Sanders completely flops, then just go back to Dylan Gabriel, because really none of this matters. Their quarterback in the future is not on the roster as of now. Yeah, Jerry Jeudy, Shedeur Sanders' EPA per dropback was getting shared around yesterday. Jerry Jeudy owes him back some of the EPA on that, like minus 1.8 EPA that he loses on that fumble. So Jeudy, come on, let's be serious here for 2 seconds. But that was class. I also, on the play afterwards, I think it was the next play or at some point when they get the ball back, Shedeur misses him and Judy's like shaking his head because he gets missed. I'm like, brother, what just happened in the game a couple of minutes ago? What are we talking about? So classic Jerry Jeudy stuff over there. But yeah, we'll see Shedeur Sanders the rest of the way as long as he can continue to play some competent football. We are going to take a quick break.
Question? I was going to say, did you see the YouTube question there? Sorry to jump. Who would you rather have rest of the season, Shedeur or JJ McCarthy? And I agree. I would rather play Shedeur Sanders. At least it's like maybe he could be something where McCarthy, we kind of know right now he's not. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, I mean, that was it was so depressing that I didn't want to even say it, but you're right. 86% of the voters say they would rather have Shedeur Sanders than JJ McCarthy rest of season. Like, rest of season for what? For fantasy football, rest of season to play a game to save your life. I mean, just I don't know. This
would have been a good question for the hurry up offense on Thursday, although this week it'll be on Wednesday.
Oh, that would be pretty alarming. Okay, well, maybe we'll do that. Like, I'll pick. That's a good one. I'm gonna write that down. It's quarterbacks to save Boone's life to start a game. I like that. All right, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we'll go through the People's Panic Meter submissions for this week. We'll get into that right after this. Let's get to this week's submission, starting with, I believe, our most popular submission here this week comes in on Lamar Jackson. Doug W sends this one in. Lamar Jackson, can't sit him, but also can't get 10 points from him. Are they managing him to save him for tougher matchups, or what's going on? He's apparently going to sit out every Wednesday practice. It feels like they're worried about his durability or something. Love the show. Thanks for the insight every week. Again, we had a ton of submissions on Lamar Jackson. Couldn't read them all off here. Boone, I before I throw this to you, I just want to read out a stat that I found today looking this over. Lamar Jackson has averaged 0.17 EPA per dropback from 2023 to 2025 and 22.2 fantasy points per game. Awesome stuff. His worst and 8th worst games from an EPA per dropback perspective, and 2 of his 3 lowest scoring fantasy games have come in the last 2 games. So he's negative 0.4 EPA per dropback in week 11 against the Browns. And then this past week against the Jets, negative 0.18. And then from a fantasy points perspective, it's his worst and second worst here since 2023. So that's where we're at with Lamar Jackson right now. What is your level of panic? Because the streets, the people, they are very freaked out right now.
Yeah, normally when we get this many emails and messages about a player, normally there's at least some panic, and maybe you'll disagree, but for me, I'm still going absolutely no panic when it comes to Lamar. I know the last 2 games have been bad. You know, it certainly isn't what I projected to happen. I thought he would have decent outings in those, but you can't get away from Lamar here because he plays the Bengals this week, and then he gets them again in the first week of the fantasy playoffs. And last year, Harmon, his 2 games versus Cincy put up 638 passing yards, 8 passing touchdowns and 88 rushing yards, over 30 points in both games. And we know the Bengals defense did not get any better. He definitely can do this again. He also gets the Steelers and the Patriots. Those are both plus matchups for fantasy QBs and passing attacks. Patriots are more like middle of the pack, but they're kind of that pass funnel. They really stop the run well, so you can throw on them, just kind of a volume thing. So Lamar can have some great games coming up here. I don't have any worries. Do you? For me, it's just no panic whatsoever.
It would be really tough to start freaking out right now as he's about to have 2 of his next 3 games against the Cincinnati Bengals. I will say, I do think no panic is the right answer. He's a great player. He's a proven player. There are 2 things that do concern me right now. Well, 3 things. 1, no Rashad Bateman the last 2 games. What did you guys expect? You take Bateman out of the offense, the whole thing crumbles. Duh. Okay, but on a serious note, the one thing that I do think is a little concerning is, as Doug kind of alluded to here, I'm just not sure he's 100% healthy. And I think you see that anytime he's got to break contain, he's got to move, he does not look right. And I know Lamar is kind of insisting, no, I'm fine, whatever, but they're managing him in practice. In games, he just doesn't look as explosive. And I think when Lamar is not at his optimal ability from a rushing perspective, I do think, and I'm joking about, I'm like 80% joking about the Bateman thing. There's 20% of me that's serious, but 20% of me needs to grow up. But nevertheless, when I do think when they take away that mobile element from Lamar Jackson's game, I do think that the Ravens offense kind of struggles to find some counter punches in what people refer to as the pure drop back game. You know, when they're not leading, when they're not able to lean on teams with the run, which we've said at times this year, their run game has been a little hit or miss. Derrick Henry's putting up fantasy points for you, but their run game's not as consistently successful as it was last year in terms of moving the offense. That's been problematic. Then you don't have the advantage of Lamar's legs. And then you kind of look at the cast of characters around him when it's DeAndre Hopkins, Zay Flowers, this version of Mark Andrews. It's not that great of a supporting cast overall because the offensive line's taking a step back. So I'm not like panicked, but I'm at least open to the idea that we get good games from Lamar Jackson the next 3 weeks, but not the fire-breathing dragon that you probably drafted him to be, which, you know, if he ends up becoming that, then I would be 0% shocked as well.
Do you think it's possible too, like the further we get removed from the injury, we might just all of a sudden he starts to play better and starts to feel better and we get the version of Lamar that we know, right? Like I always think that's possible too. Some of these guys, we've talked about it many times, rush to come back. They're not themselves necessarily. And they've been winning games. And if they're winning and they can put it in Derrick Henry's belly and the defense can make some plays and Lamar doesn't have to be Superman, then maybe they're content doing that for the time being, right? But against the Bengals, I have a very hard time believing that this guy is not going to at least contribute a couple touchdowns in that game. And like you said, maybe it won't be 30 points per game like he did against them last year, but I think Lamar is going to be fine. And you hope by the fantasy playoffs that he is closer to full health and that we do see the Lamar of old and maybe some offenses that can push him a little bit more. Maybe we get like a sneaky shootout with him and Drake May or something like that in the fantasy playoffs. But yeah, what is really the move here? There's no, a lot of leagues, you're past the trade deadline. You're not trading him. You're just rolling with them the rest of the way. And I think you're going to be fine based on the matchups and based on who it is. I think he's going to be okay. So I get it. I get the some panic aspect there, but I'm still staying strong at no panic on Lamar.
I think that's the right answer. The reality is you're not benching Lamar Jackson for some person off the waiver wire. So what's the point? You're going to play him and just roll the dice and see what happens.
If he busts in this Bengals game, though, we'll put him in the coping corner after that.